Hey ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, episode 202. As always, I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche. No Dom this week, so it's another solo show. Sorry about that, but some things came up. Anyways, this week we're going to be talking about some of the news regarding sales numbers, a couple of things regarding Xbox, a couple of things regarding WB and its games division, and the big news, Halo Infinite getting delayed out of the launch of the Xbox Series X and moving on to 2021. Pretty big news there, so let's hop right into it. First up, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated has now sold more than 1 million copies. It's pretty astounding. You know, this is a remaster that literally takes the game from almost 20 years ago, adds a new coat of paint over the top, doesn't make any gameplay changes, doesn't modernize any of the mechanics of the game in any real meaningful way. But fans were excited. Fans love this game. It's often considered the best SpongeBob game in terms of licensed titles for the SpongeBob brand. And you can see why. It's a lot of fun. It's a very good game, but it's a fun game. And at the end of the day, you know, video games are supposed to be fun, or should, you know, could be. And not every game needs to be fun. Last of Us Part 2, it was an incredible game. I wouldn't necessarily say the experience of playing it is fun. It's entertaining. But yeah, it's awesome to see this game sell 1 million copies. I wonder if the Bracer Group, who are the guys who snatch up all of these mid-tier titles and IP and licenses, if they're going to do some more remasters, because this selling 1 million copies is huge. I would assume a lot of that has to do with the fact that it is SpongeBob SquarePants, one of the biggest entertainment properties on the planet. And outside of the people who are buying this for nostalgia, I guarantee you there's probably tons of families who went out and bought this because it is a clear family game, and we don't get a whole lot of those anymore. Outside of Nintendo, we don't get a whole lot of pure family games. You know, there's the Crash remakes, the Spyro remakes. Seems like the only one we're getting fully these days are remakes of older titles, but either way, it's incredible to see. Next up, we've been wondering, what is going to be the name of the Lockhart? Project Lockhart, which is the second piece of hardware coming out of Xbox. Everyone assumes it's going to be their lower end, cheaper entry point into next gen. Some speculate it's not going to have a disk drive. Others think it's not even going to access anything else outside of streaming. The concrete details of what the box actually does are unknown, and how much it costs is unknown. But thanks to a controller package for the brand new Xbox controller, which has a redesigned D-pad, they added the share button. It's slightly changed in overall design, very slightly. But that went on sale, I guess, earlier. Somebody got a hold of them, and it's for the ice white version of the controller. And on the box packaging itself, it says capable to work with the Xbox One, Xbox Series, and then it has X, and then a line, and then S, basically saying that there's going to be a Series X and a Series S. We've been wondering, is that going to be the name of Lockhart? Is it going to be Xbox Series S? You know how the 1S was the iteration on the Xbox One, and we also had the Xbox One X, so it made sense. Now it's clear as day. What this also likely means is that the 1S isn't long for the road either. Not a lot of time left in that one. We've already seen them kind of discontinue the Xbox One X quietly, and it seems that maybe moving forward they might rebrand the 1S as just the Xbox One and avoid any kind of brand confusion. But yeah, it looks like that's the name of it. We're probably going to get a reveal of the console itself later this month when Xbox is set to announce the price and date of their box. And they have a little bit to prove with their launch of their console, because one of their biggest titles got delayed, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's really cool to see that the Lockhart is going to be called the Series S. I know there's some conversations regarding, well, you know, it's going to be confusing for the mom or the grandma or the grandpa or the dad to go to the store, and they're going to see the 1S, and they're going to see the Series S, and they're going to see the Series X. And I think part of that, Xbox and Microsoft need to maybe rebrand the Xbox One S just simply as Xbox One. But also we need to have this conversation of consumers aren't as dumb as we think they are. I think a lot of times these kids who send their parents out to get them something or ask for something do enough research to be like, hey, I don't want the wrong one. Let me provide you a detailed analysis of the exact product I want, right? And give them all the notes on it, and maybe images as well. And I do think consumers have grown up in a way to understand, especially with the phone models, of there being a new iPhone model, Android model, Google Pixel model every year. It seems like that we've kind of smartened up to the idea of there being multiple SKUs and making sure you buy the one that's right for you. So it is a concern partially. I do think they do need to do some rebranding to make it a lot clearer. But I don't think people will be as confused as the hyperbole is suggesting. Next up, WB. Don't know if they're going to be sold, at least the games division. Recently, DC had some major layoffs in the comics department. It just seems like AT&T is unsure of what they want to do with that whole section that isn't related to HBO Max. And it's unfortunate. I really hope we don't lose DC Comics in a major way, and I hope that WB Games finds a home for all of these talented studios. There was a recent thing that came out where people are thinking that they're no longer selling it. The wording and verbiage never really suggests that. It's just like we're in a good place right now. But anyways, we had some news in terms of WB Games and their studios. We have the DC Fandom event happening in the next week or so. I believe it's August 28th, or 22nd, sorry. And we have 2 panels announced for the 2 major developers for WB Games. WB Montreal will unveil their next Batman game. If you remember, this game has been teased for a while with weird cryptic stuff, and then COVID hit. It's supposed to be, assumedly, a Court of Owls game set in the Arkhamverse, or at least WB Montreal's Arkhamverse. That's still unclear. Obviously, we'll get details at this Fandom event. And next up, not only did we get the unveiling of Rocksteady's Suicide Squad game. Yes, they're making a Suicide Squad game. Rumored to be games as a service. That's not confirmed. The only thing that's confirmed is that you will be playing as the Suicide Squad. And now we got a title for the game. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This is what people had assumed the game was going to be about. It's, like I said before, suggested it's a games as a service, Destiny-like. That's going to be interesting because the Suicide Squad is a ragtag group of anti-heroes and villains, and the movie didn't do too well. So it's an interesting call to have such a talented developer work on this. Do I think this game will have pitfalls if it is a games as a service? Yes, I think all games as a service games are going to have weak links. But do I question the quality? No. Rocksteady's a talented developer. My only worry with quality is if over these years their games getting canceled and stuff, how many people have left, how many people have entered. Is it still the Rocksteady that made the amazing Rocksteady trilogy known as the Arkham trilogy? Who knows? And I could do the research, I can try to figure it out, but I have faith in Rocksteady, and I'm not somebody who's as opposed to games as service games as other people are. I'm always willing to give them a try, and if they have the proper IP behind them, I could get hooked. That's why I'm excited for Marvel's Avengers. I did play a little bit of it. I'll get to that later in the what have we been playing section of the podcast. But I love DC. Not as much as Marvel. I'm definitely more of a Marvel guy, but I do love DC and its characters. And if they can give me a games as a service of the Suicide Squad where I can have a blast playing with this ragtag group of people, whether it be Harley Quinn or King Shark or, you know, whoever it ends up being, you know, the Deadshots and even some more obscure characters that haven't necessarily hit the Suicide Squad on the big screen yet, or in a major way from the comics end of things. It is going to be interesting to see what happens with WB Games. It's going to be interesting to see how these 2 games shape out. I think people would rather have it flipped, where Rocksteady's making another Batman game because they know what they can deliver. And I think people would be more open to, okay, WB Montreal is trying this weird experimental games as a service Suicide Squad game. So them being flipped is interesting. But, you know, these developers get tired of working on the same stuff. And with Rocksteady, they made 3 exceptional Batman games. And maybe they just got to a point where they wanted to work on something else. We heard that a couple of their games got canceled, like I said before. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. Here's what I want to pitch real quick. So if Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a games as a service game, which usually those are ongoing games that get supported post-launch, if Microsoft, hopefully Microsoft, if they end up getting sold, if Microsoft ends up buying WB Games, if a Suicide Squad, if a major AAA DC game can be in Game Pass as a service and it's an ongoing game that's supported with additional characters, that could be huge. Like imagine if Avengers was exclusive to PlayStation Now or Xbox Game Pass, right? That'd be crazy. Maybe not even exclusive, but if it was just in the service, because then that allows you to have a built-in reason to have Game Pass, because you're like, it's essentially paying a monthly subscription to an MMO at that point. And, you know, this is all with saying hopefully the game's good. But that could be an interesting thing where once WB Games is acquired, I would assume, at least on Microsoft's end, they would allow any games that had already been released to stay on other platforms. But then they're immediately going to chuck that thing into Game Pass, right? Either of those games, the Batman game and the Suicide, because it bolsters that service they're trying to sell to people. So, DC Fandom happening a little later next week. We won't cover it on next week's podcast, but the one after that, because it's not happening until Saturday. And we usually record on either Thursday or Friday, so we can turn it around by Sunday. A little peek behind the curtain there. But I'm excited to see what both of these studios have. I know they're both very talented. WB Montreal has been underutilized by WB Games in a lot of ways, and Rocksteady kind of has been underutilized the last 5 years after the release of Arkham Knight. So it's going to be interesting to see what they show us. And, we're in this influx of Marvel games. I want to get back to seeing some incredible DC games because they were on top of the world there for a while too, and then kind of just disappeared. So we'll see what happens on August 22nd. Next up, this is more of a personal story it's of personal interest to me. Shroud is one of my favorite streamers. He used to stream on Twitch. Then he signed the exclusive deal for Mixer. Then obviously Mixer shut down recently. So he had been quiet. People had been speculating, where is he going to land? Is he signing with YouTube Gaming? Is he going back to Twitch? There was some crazy stuff of is he going to start his own streaming platform, which would likely never happen. He decided, and he announced that he's coming back to Twitch, which is huge, especially with the whole Dr. Disrespect heading to YouTube situation. And boy, howdy, was his return incredible in terms of just pure numbers. So on Twitch, he averaged 222,000 viewers. This is on his opening stream, by the way, the first day back. He reached a max viewership of 516,000 viewers. And he got 16,500 subscriptions. That's incredible. It's crazy. Those numbers have likely skyrocketed in the days since. Before he had left Twitch, he was one of the biggest streamers on that platform, and then Mixer paid him a whole ton of money to come over. So it's a win-win for him. He built an audience on Twitch, then he got the money, as they say, got the bag, and went over to Mixer, and then Mixer faltered, and now he's coming back to Twitch to a huge audience of people who wanted him back. Mixer being around was good for competition because Twitch you don't want a monopoly in any kind of vector of business, right? And YouTube Gaming obviously still exists, but Mixer succeeding would have been huge for streamers because it would allow them to negotiate and have some wiggle room, and they still do with YouTube. But, now that it's gone, I wonder what kind of deal Shroud got, because maybe he did flirt with the idea of going to YouTube and hardballed them a little bit because he has the leverage in that situation. I know everyone listening doesn't necessarily care about streaming, but these are huge numbers for somebody coming back to the platform. And once again, this is my personal take. I'm not a huge Dr. Disrespect guy based on everything he does outside of streaming, as well as some of the mishaps he's had while streaming. So I'm glad to see Shroud come back to Twitch and kind of, take the stage for a bit because, knock on wood, as it's been, he's just a good dude that is really good at video games, really, really good. Anyways, that's the rundown for this week. It's time for the big news. And sorry, apologies if this podcast is shorter than normally, but it's hard to carry conversation with just myself when I'm going over news and stuff I've been doing. Usually when there's another co-host, the conversation flows and it can go a little bit longer. So I just want to apologize up front if these last couple of podcasts are shorter. Maybe you enjoy it. Maybe you don't like the super long podcasts, but either way. Halo Infinite is delayed. This is huge. 343 Industries and Microsoft have announced that Halo Infinite has been pushed to 2021. They released a statement on social media, and it said, they released an image. Today I want to share an important Halo Infinite update with the community. We have made the difficult decision to shift our release to 2021 to ensure the team has adequate time to deliver a Halo game experience that meets our vision. The decision to shift our release is the result of multiple factors that have contributed to development challenges, including the ongoing COVID-related impacts affecting us all this year. I want to acknowledge the hard work from our team at 343 Industries, who have remained committed to making a great game and finding solutions to development challenges. However, it is not sustainable for the well-being of our team or the overall success of the game to ship this holiday. We know this will be disappointing to many of you, and we share your sentiment. The passion and support the community has shown over the years has been incredible and inspiring. We wanted nothing more than play the game with our community this holiday. The extra time will let us finish the critical work necessary to deliver the most ambitious Halo game ever at the quality we know our fans expect. Thank you for your support and understanding, Chris Lee, studio head, Halo Infinite. Big deal. This was supposed to be the premier launch title on either console. Now, Spider-Man Miles Morales is assumedly releasing alongside the PS5. We still don't know that. You know, it's coming holiday 2020. That game is going to sell very well. It's going to have an insane attach rate, obviously. But in terms of premier, titles, Halo Infinite is huge to release on an Xbox at launch. Hasn't happened since the first Halo and the first Xbox. And I'm not going to sit here and argue the fact that Spider-Man is a bigger property than Halo, because it certainly is. But public perception, we've been hearing rumblings about it being a shorter game, less of an experience, more of a lost legacy. Not going to diminish people from buying it, but Halo Infinite, if that comes out and the multiplayer is free to play and the campaign is great and it just is rock solid, that's a big thing for people to get into the ecosystem, especially if there's a cheap way to get into with the Xbox Series X. Now, in addition to this, the Xbox Series X has been confirmed to release in November 2020 with a specific date yet to be announced at a later date, supposedly in August. Now, this is probably to lessen the blow, right? Our big games are getting delayed, but we want you to know console's fine, still coming out in November. What does the delay of Halo Infinite mean for the launch of the Series X? This is a big question. This is something that it wasn't an easy decision and took some time to commit to. And they didn't make this decision lightly. On a recent interview, Phil Spencer stated that they even, lobbied the idea of releasing it in parts. And I was like, it was thought about, but then they decided to move on from that idea. And there had to be something crucial to Halo that just wasn't working yet. And, people like to point the finger and say, oh, it was the feedback from the game's showcase where Halo didn't display as they thought. And maybe that played a partial case. I can't sit here and say it didn't play any case, because that'd just be ludicrous. And I do think COVID also played a case, even though some people are saying that's just a scapegoat. I think both those were factors. But I do think it was a culmination of many things. You're talking about the biggest launch title for their console in years. This is a big, big moment for Xbox, especially after they floundered 2013. And I don't think they did this lightly. And, they could have released it and it could have been a broken mess, and then it would have gone dunked on at launch and people would have, blasted it and been like, why should you even buy the Xbox? They can't even get their game to work, yada, yada, yada. And I do think this is the lesser of two evils. Some people are getting very hyperbolic and saying this is killing the Series X dead in the water. I don't think that's the case. I think both consoles are going to sell out this fall, especially with the way we've seen game spending trending in the NPD because of COVID and people being at home more. This could lead to Microsoft opening the wallet for Game Pass. They could be like, okay, we don't have that. What can we do? All right, we can't really get exclusives this late. How about this? What if we open our wallet and we get Cyberpunk to launch in Game Pass day and date? What if we get Assassin's Creed, Valhalla? What if we get these big titles? What if we get Madden 21, right? FIFA 21, these sports titles too that carry a lot of weight with next gen. What if we get them into Game Pass on release? Or at least at release of the console, right? That'd be huge. And I do think we're going to see some announcements, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But it does make the launch less exciting. Here's the thing. I'm still buying an Xbox day one. The backwards compatibility in Game Pass is a tremendous value when you're spending $500 for a new piece of hardware. There's rumblings that Spider-Man Miles Morales might also come to PS4, and if that's the case, I don't necessarily need to buy a PS5 yet. I'll get it for the next big launch title. But it does make the launch of the Xbox Series X less exciting. Before this delay happened, I knew so many people that were like, oh, I can't wait to get the new Xbox. Dude, Halo Infinite multiplayer is free. I'm so excited for a new Halo game. So many people were so stoked. And many of those friends are still buying an Xbox, but the era's kind of left the room at this point, It's just not as exciting. And it's weird because I don't even think the PlayStation 5 launch is necessarily exciting either. And once again, I'm not going to downplay the quality of Spider-Man Miles Morales. I'm very excited for that game. I think that game's probably going to review very well. It's going to be a solid game. But for some reason, it's just not drawing that huge, an Uncharted launching with the PlayStation, or God of War 2 or Horizon 2, right? For some reason, because maybe people know it's possibly going to be a $40 title. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to have that excitement around it, whereas Xbox did. Xbox was they were second place last gen, technically third place if you count the Switch, but the Wii U was actually in that gen. Either way, people want competition for consumer sake, and it's like they're launching with a brand new Halo. Man, we haven't had a new Halo in so long, and now it got delayed. Here's the thing. I think the game is probably going to be incredible at launch now, way better than it would have been. I think my assumption is spring. I doubt they push this to fall of next year. And yeah, it is a bummer, and it is less exciting. There's no workaround there. I'm not of the opinion that this kills the Xbox dead in the water at all. But I do think you can't look over or gloss over the fact that it does make the launch of their next-gen console less exciting. My other question I had for this is there an alternate or backup plan to make the launch of the console feel substantial and worth the purchase at launch? Now, in a recent interview, Phil Spencer, he was on Animal Talking, which is Gary Whitta, the writer of Abomination, a tremendous sci-fi novel, as well as Rogue One, Star Wars film, which you'd probably know him for. He had him on his talk show, and in the interview, Phil Spencer stated that there are still some big announcements regarding Game Pass that have yet to be revealed. Now, we could take this in a couple of different ways. The big announcement could be games launching in a Game Pass that we don't know about yet, right? The Cyberpunks, the Assassin's Creeds, what have you. It could be that when you buy the console, you get a year of Game Pass. I don't know if they'd extend it that much, maybe 6 months, maybe 3 months, but it could be something huge like that. Phil Spencer isn't dumb. He understands that this delaying Halo is going to be a big blow at launch for this console. And I don't know if he has all the answers. Maybe there isn't an alternative. Maybe the console does come out and doesn't have the excitement, right? And they don't have a backup plan. But from what everything Phil's done and said, to me anyways, I know people feel very differently, I think that he does have a plan, and they probably had to. They didn't make the Halo Infinite delay happen without looking elsewhere to see how they can bolster their launch. I don't know if there's any secret launch titles we don't know about yet they haven't announced, because that would seem odd not to announce him at your game showcase, though that was centered on Game Pass, so maybe they do have launch titles that aren't entering Game Pass, but they are exclusive launch titles, which would be a weird conundrum. But I do think there's something we don't know about. Obviously, the Series S could be that. Super low price to get a next gen. Obviously, it could be games launching in a Game Pass. Obviously, it could be Game Pass subscription tied to your purchase of the console. But I wonder if it's something else. And that's an interesting thing to look at, because a company as big as Microsoft with Xbox and Phil Spencer as the head, they had to have some sort of alternate or backup plan because they want to entice people to buy the console or at least invest in Game Pass, right? So by the end of the month, according to rumors, we should know what their plan is moving forward. I'm still excited for Xbox Series X in general, and I do think the launch is still, I'm looking forward to it. But man, this Halo Infinite delay killed a lot of that for a lot of people, which is weird because beforehand the internet was bashing Halo Infinite for the graphics, and now they're pissed that it's not coming out. It's the internet, you know how that's going to work. But we'll see what happens. Huge news. Sorry that the last couple episodes have seemed super Xbox-centric, but it's just the way it has been. PlayStation has been kind of quiet. The only thing we recently got was a screenshot of Miles Morales in E! Magazine, or EW or something, which isn't too exciting. I mean, it looked pretty, don't get me wrong, but it's like, not much news there. Let's hop into what we've been playing. Much of the same for me, Warzone, Grounded, all that stuff. The one thing I wanted to mention is Marvel Avengers Beta. I pre-ordered the game, so I got access to it on Xbox this weekend. I've only been able to play the opening mission of the game, which is the A-Day mission. And I just want to give my brief thoughts real quick. Obviously, I'll have more substantial thoughts next week when I've played a little bit more. And I'm not going to play a whole lot because I don't want to get burnt out before the real game even comes out. I'm probably just going to play the main missions, and then test out a couple of the other type of missions just to get a feel of it in general. But I'm not going ham by any means like other people are. Anyways, my brief thoughts on each of the characters in terms of gameplay. Thor had been getting bashed a lot, and people said it didn't feel good, and how does it compare to Kratos? Me personally, playing Thor in that short section, I liked it. I think the hammer, throwing it and getting it back, felt good. I think there was some weight to it. I thought it felt fun to throw the hammer. I thought the combos felt nice. Obviously, it's not going to feel as polished as God of War, but I do think it feels good. Like I thought it had really good feedback. I thought you felt like you were wielding the hammer when it hit people. There was a force to it. you felt like Thor, which was awesome. Iron Man was probably the weakest one to me out of the A-Day Avengers that you got to play as. The on rail Star Foxy shooting stuff didn't do it for me. It kind of felt blah. His actual combat felt neat, but he does feel like he lacks a bit of punch because he lacks a bit of punch. Like you can do physical melee attacks, but he mostly shoots stuff, and a lot of that didn't feel like it had a lot of impact. It was mostly like searing hot lasers and not really impactful blows with like explosives necessarily. So I'm hopeful that he maybe gets better with trying him out in the war rooms or harm rooms. Sorry, not war rooms. The war rooms are the digital live stream events. Next up, who was next? Was it Hulk? Yeah, it was Hulk. Hulk is awesome. Hulk is one of my favorites out of the bunch. To preface, he's my favorite of Marvel character, period, outside of this video game. And I do like him, and I do think he feels good. He just smashes stuff. You're the Hulk. He is a little clunky at times, and you do feel like you're getting beat up without necessarily being able to move at a pace that feels like you're doing a lot. I mean, what damage-wise you do a lot, but in terms of getting around, it's the Hulk. You're big and lumbering, and I do love his traversal. His jumping feels really cool. And that's pretty much not a lot there for Hulk. Captain America is absolutely my favorite in terms of gameplay. He feels good. Throwing the shield is awesome. You don't have anything comparable really, so you don't have the Thor problem that people have with Kratos. He feels the most combat ready. The thing that sucks is he'll probably not be available until you finish the single player mode, which is kind of a bummer. But he does feel awesome, and I can't wait to use him. And hopefully there's some really awesome, I said awesome like 8 times, really cool outfits for him. And I wonder if they're going to introduce Winter Soldier as his own character, or if Cap's going to get... I doubt they'd give Cap a Winter Soldier skin, right? Who knows? But it gives me hope for the Cap-style characters, because he just feels... He feels grounded. He feels substantial. He can block attacks. He has the best combat toolkit to me out of any of the Avengers. Black Widow is probably my second favorite. She feels really cool too, which is funny because she's the most human-like, so they probably had to focus on her the most to make her feel like she was doing something. Her fight with Taskmaster gets me really excited for the boss fights in this game. I'm excited to see how those play out, and they can do so many different types of villains. And I loved the showdown and the dialogue, and it just felt like a movie moment, which is really cool. She obviously feels the daintiest, and it's not because she's necessarily a woman, it's that all the other people are really huge. Like, I would almost guarantee Hawkeye is going to feel the same way when he comes out, because he's just a human, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it for the A-Day stuff. I enjoyed it. I thought the gameplay felt fun, and a little bit of story that they do, I thought was cool too. Like, I don't know why people are so harsh on this game. I think it's probably because they wanted another Spider-Man, and ever since this game was announced, I knew what it was, and I was excited for that. I wanted a AAA third-person Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and that's what I'm getting. And if they can support it with good content and a really good pace of introducing new heroes, I'm going to be excited. Once again, I'm really pissed off that Spider-Man is console exclusive. That's a bummer, and it's going to bother me for the rest of this game's lifetime. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. If you can, please head on over to YouTube, search Controlled Intro, so it'll pop right up. Hit the bell notification so you know when we upload new videos. Like the video if you like it. Leave us a comment. I read everyone, and I'll reply. And it helps us. So if you can, please like the videos and comment. Every one of them helps us grow. Other than that, you can head over to iTunes, Google Play, which I think is going away, Spotify, search Controlled Intro, so pop right up. On iTunes, if you can leave us a review, that helps us out so much, guys. We move up in the algorithm, and people can see us on the charts for gaming podcasts. On Spotify, even if you've already listened to this on iTunes or maybe on YouTube, if you can go to Spotify and just hit the play button and mute it, turn your volume down and just let it play, those will help us as well. You don't necessarily need to play the same podcast over and over again, because that doesn't work. Because it obviously pings your IP, and I don't want to get fake, hundreds of listens or whatever. But if you can, just ping it that one time for the one listen, that'd be great. Other than that, you can find me at Jerrad_ on Twitter. Collectively, we're at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest abbreviated. Sorry for the shorter podcast this week, guys. But like I said, it's hard for me to go on and on talking to myself when we're specifically mentioning this stuff. But even if it's me next week, I'll have a lot of substantial thoughts on Marvel Avengers. So look forward to that. Thank you guys. Have a great weekend. See you guys next time.